it's so much better. It's so much better. And you know, I sometimes, I'm not gonna lie, I'm a little freaked out. Like, I don't really understand that science, you know? And so I'm sure the science people feel the exact same way, if not even more fearful, you know, of the dreadful math. But if all you have to do is understand it, like a little bit more than what you expect the kids to understand it. You don't have to be an expert, you know what I mean? Like, I'm never gonna know the science as well as Jen does. Jen's never gonna know the math as well as I do. But we just have to, you know, make sure we talk, you know, a lot, you know, and I always like to do like a run through, you know, like, okay, so if I'm teaching this to the kids, Jen, you know, I'm gonna say this, is that right? And she's like, yeah, or she'll correct me or whatever. So, I guess we should just get started because most of you haven't seen this, so.
And those of you that have, don't worry, we're not gonna spend the hour and a half like we did last time actually doing it. We're just gonna kind of run through and look, give you an idea. This was one of the first truly integrated problem-based learning activities, well, project-based in this case, learning activities that we did together. And this was one, that's the thing too, is a lot of people think, like, how many of you have experience with integrating lessons? Okay, and I know a lot of you are elementary, so it kind of comes naturally since you're already doing everything else.
Sorry to interrupt. What grade level? Like, can you just show a 5, a 6, a 7, just with your, okay, 6, 7,
8.
8.
Oh, there's
Ooh,
8.
ooh, girl. Okay.
Yeah, because we're middle school, so
Okay.
I'm
Yeah.
7, she's
Oh,
8.
that's
I've taught 4th,
You're high
5th,
school?
6th, and 7th.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay.
But that does make a big difference, because in the middle school, you do tend to be a little bit more like you teach yours, and some people are really good about bringing in other stuff, other people not so much. You get and working in the STEM program, that was our goal, is to integrate and bring in all the different contents, thank you, because studies have shown that's how the kids learn better. Because I'll even get the kids, they're like, Miss, why do we have to do math? Like, we're in science class. You know, and vice versa. Like, I know you've heard that in math as well. Like, why do we have to do science? And
No, they like the science better. I don't really get that in my class. They're like, oh, cool. So.
all right, so this was King Kong. Sorry, the display function does not want to work properly. Yes, I tried that. Yeah, I tried going a couple different ways. So this is us a couple of years ago, and I don't even remember who took that picture. But basically, this was one of our meetings where we were looking, and I was doing cells in my class, and we started just like looking through the microscope and looking at the different cells, looking at plant cells, and that just got us thinking about, like, well, what's the kind of math that's involved in cells and things like that. And there's so many different things, from surface area to scientific notation, literally comparing volume, different types of cells, and how, you know, they're not all the same, and how they change, and how the size can be different, depending on the size of the animal. Like, there's so many different things that go into it. How many of you have done a PBL, project-based or problem-based learning activity? So literally, a PBL can be either just problem-based, where you present the kids with some sort of problem that they have to solve, using all the different elements. And usually it's one that, I mean, I've known some teachers to do it at the beginning of a unit and kind of introduce the content. I've seen some do it as, okay, we've been learning all of this for weeks and weeks, and now you're gonna bring it all together to try and solve this big problem. Or you can have project-based, which can still involve the problem, but a lot of times the kids are building a product. There's something that they're creating in the end of it. When we taught 6th grade, we actually did one using speed. It was called the Everest PBL. And that was another one, just like King Kong, we actually got from other resources and adapted for our program and for our students. So these were not ones that we created from the bottom up. We've done that, but it's very challenging. It helps to kind of jump in with ones that you can find first and try those out and see how they work. And the Everest one was really cool. That was one where we presented the kids with a problem. They had to design a way. It was as if they were climbers trekking up Everest, and some of their fellow climbers came down with high altitude pulmonary edema. And so they had to find a way to get their friends, their co-climbers, back down to Base Camp 4. And so, I mean, we did a whole thing. Ours was actually English, math, social studies, and science. We brought in all 4 disciplines, and the kids were reading a book about a kid their age that had climbed Everest. they had to use speed functions to actually look and see if they were gonna create some sort of zip line with, where they could attach the climbers into, and they actually had to test it out and look and see like, okay, at what angle do they need to adjust the zip line and build it and attach it, and so that the people don't like fall out and die on their way down. And there's a lot of different elements that go into it, and in the end, they actually ended up building like a little prototype of the basket that they would have their people in. So that was kind of the project part. Let's see. So King Kong was actually looking at, for the science part, we teach cells understanding the functions of the cell membrane, the nucleus, cell wall, so on and so on, vacuole, mitochondria. And so this
It's our
mostly
understanding
focused-
that Dr. West has an expectation that you develop one integrated lesson by next Friday. So just kind of as we go through the PowerPoint, just, make sure that you're looking at the progression, and just make little notes, and then you can start thinking of, well, I have an idea to do this. Okay, well, and I'm not saying ours is perfect, but it's a launching pad, like, do I have my TEKS? Do I have my learning goals, my objectives? What do I want the kids to know? What do I want them to walk away, and be able to communicate? So, just real quick, I want to throw that in.
Yeah. And the first time that we did this, we looked at our seats and we were like, well, hey, I teach cells at this time, and the math part, do you want to explain the math part?
Oh, it's all about volume and surface area, scale factors. So, like right now, I don't think it's as important that we.
Yeah,
Well, I don't
just
know.
the basics.
I just feel like right now we should just give them a blueprint, and then later we can get into more detail of the TEKS and the objectives, and because right now I feel like, what do y'all want? You just want kind of like a blueprint real quick, and then we can expand later, because I don't want to be boring. I don't want to be standing up here like talking the whole time, which is what we're doing right now. And I want it to be for you. Like, so go through this, like I'm thinking, go through it fast, and then you can say, hey, can you go back to this, or can you go back to that, and explain a little bit deeper, or go a little further on whatever you want to know. Sound cool? Okay.
Alright. This was a video that we showed the kids. It's kind of like the hook
Engage.
introduction. Yeah, the
Hook.
engage.
Write it down. How are you gonna hook them?
Yeah, because that's a big thing. And it's cool. The kids, most of them have never seen King Kong. So we're like, really? I mean, it's not that old. I mean, we show them the newer version, so.
Are y'all using the Engage to Learn model in order to develop this with PBL?
I've never heard of that. So I
That's
guess.
what we, okay. I'm sorry.
So no. Or maybe we are, but we don't know that it's called that. But yeah, you have to hook them. Like, how are you gonna get them excited? How are you gonna get them interested?
What is Engage to Learn? I don't know.
We took a week-long professional development over this way to teach learning, which is pretty much just project-based learning. That's all it is. It's just teaching you how to format it and put your kids in the groups and giving them this question or problem to solve. It's very detailed.
Is it,
It's something that San Marcos CISD wants to adopt, and I guess we're getting a grant to do it. And so they're-
is it canned curriculum, like they already handed you King Kong, for example, or
No.
whatever?
It's just
Okay,
the
so
blueprint.
teach you how to do this.
It
Yes.
sounds like a model, like.
Yes.
Kind of sounds like the
Yes.
transformation PBL model that we use.
It is a model, it's an engaged to learn model is what they call it.
Mhm.
Is it specific for math or science?
No, anyone can go in there and plug in and share, the community share your work too.
Well, PBL is the latest fad in education. People think it's a silver bullet. PBLs are not a silver bullet. I have seen horrible PBLs, and I've seen great PBLs. So, don't think just because you do a PBL that it's gonna be wonderful. Unless you've done the kind of planning that they're gonna be talking to you about, it's not gonna be good.
Yeah, and PBLs can be great, but yes, I've seen some bad PBLs. I've seen some that take way longer than you intended. They can be simple. Like, it can literally be like, hey, you give the kids a problem, and they have to solve it. It's better than just saying, okay, add this or go look up this. It just gives them an excuse to be doing the same things you have them do, but they think it's more fun because you're having them solve something. And in this case, it was literally, can giant creatures exist, such as King Kong, based on the things that they're gonna do. And so like in science, I'm not gonna mention that again. In science, they were doing an investigation, some of you might have even done this, where you put you put cornstarch in a bag, and you put the bag in its water and iodine. And those of you that don't know, iodine is an indicator for any type of starch. So in the presence of starch, like the cornstarch, it will turn purple or blackish, purple blackish. And so that's what happens. Even though you've got the cornstarch in a bag and you put it into the water and iodine, the bag is sealed, it turns that purple blackish color. And so the kids are like, well, how did that happen? I'm like, is it, and so we talk about all the different scenarios, and there's always one kid that usually comes up with, well, it had to have gone through. And we're like, well, wait a second, I don't see any holes. Did something poke a hole in the bag? We look at that and we talk about osmosis and, how the molecules can move from one place to another. I don't get as detailed because, I don't want to get into the specifics of osmosis, but I do throw that term out there just to give them that kind of, all right, let's see. All right, and then there's the math part. Anything?
Those are all my teaks, which are obviously very important. And these are some of the,
Wait a minute, how many math takes did you teach then in this? 4? What? How many, 4? 4?
Yeah.
Okay, 5.
Yeah, mine was just one teak, but it's a really important teak. It's one of the hardest that they have.
Well, it's a broad teak. Sometimes you only teach part of a teak, so when you're doing your lesson planning,
Yeah.
don't think you have to teach all of one teak for that lesson.
and I didn't teach all those. Those were the teaks that were addressed within King Kong. Because King Kong was kind of like the culminating lesson after I did all of my geometry and measurement. So after that unit, don't think that I taught all those teaks in this lesson. Those were just the teaks that were listed that were included in this PBL.
Yeah, and the lesson itself took, about a week? It takes about a week for the kids to build the models. They build models of the cell, 1 by 1 by 1, 2 by 2 by 2, 3 by 3 by 3, all of those. And then they literally find like total surface area, volume, all of that. And it eventually leads to, looking at this in relation to cell size, could the giant creatures exist? And so they have to, and it's the key to this is based on what you have learned in the investigation. Because a lot of them will start bringing in things, well, what about dinosaurs, and what about this, and what about this? And I'm like, okay, what do we know about those animals? What do we know that's true? And then, it's like, that's very speculative. We haven't learned about all that. And just based on this investigation and these here, what do you think? And then they had to make stuff to actually show it, show their understanding. Yeah, and that's King Kong. That's just one of the lessons we did.
That's just a broad, general, okay, I have no idea where to start. Okay, what's something that I have found that the kids kind of have some trouble with? Is there any way that I can, get some help from my counterpart? And so, I mean, we could have taken the whole 2 weeks, doing all these things, but,
Yeah. And there's other ones that we've done. Y'all got to see Lovely Plasma Soup. That was our kind of just bringing it together, talking about it. We had already done the activity, and we still spent, this was the next year, we still spent another, hour and a half, 2 hours, talking about it, going over everything. And that one's a way easier one than.
and you have to do that. I mean, because for me, being the math person, I'll forget. It's been a whole year, so exactly,
She still has to teach me the King Kong math part every single time. I'm like, okay,
yeah, and
explain this
and I
whole
want to make
scale
sure that I
factor.
have the science vocabulary and I use the correct language, and I know that it's cytoplasm because I call it the guts, which I know it's not called the guts of the cell, but it's the cytoplasm and a whole bunch of other stuff, which is the volume in my math brain, and the cell membrane, and I just have to make sure that I get it straight every year. So I don't know, I think that's another reason why, even though it's a drag to your lesson plan for it to be so detailed, that's why it's important, because what if Jen goes away? I've been doing this for 5 years, okay, well, how is it, how does it go again? But the very detailed lesson plans are a drag, but you gotta do it. You do it good, you know, do it well the first time, then you have it there to rely on.
Alright, now one thing, the difference between King Kong and Plasma Soup is those were integrated lessons where literally we've got math and we've got science and the kids are doing both at the same time about concepts they're learning at that time. Then there's other lessons that you might have that, like especially in science, those of you who teach science know there's quite a bit of math in science, especially depending on what age level you're teaching. And so you might have, like this was one that I did in my class one year, and just looking at lung capacity and looking at using balloons to look at circumference and volume and looking to see how much, you know, air their lungs can hold and compare. Looking at heart rate and exercise.
One problem that we ran into in an observation of a science classroom with a teacher who took data but did not know how to put it into a chart form for the students, and left the students with this raw data that they didn't see any kind of pattern to it or anything. So if you're working, if you're a math person and you're working with a science teacher, I would urge you to have some conversations about what form is the data going to be in. And if perhaps, this was rare, I was very surprised when this happened, but those kids stayed confused the whole rest of the year until the math teacher actually took the science lab and redid the lab. And then the students understood. But because the science teacher didn't have them put the data in a data table and then have them graph it where it made any sense, I said the kids were confused the rest of the year.
I bet.
Now, how many of y'all have your scope and sequences or years of glance or TEAGs or anything like that? How many?
Are you already inspired? Do you already know, you know, kind of an idea, like I wanna try this? Awesome, awesome.
Because that to me is like the first key to the one video.
Yeah, I mean, I
figure you'll probably
I feel like y'all should tell, yeah, I don't like this.
Yeah, sorry.
So, do you guys have questions at this point? Yes, ma'am.
What you're showing on your PowerPoint, is that an actual lesson plan or is that just? 'Cause that's,
No.
okay, cause like from what I
Lesson
know.
plan is way more
No.
detailed.
Okay, cause I was confused, like, is that what you present to your kids and like?
Yes,
That's-
yes, we use that to guide us. I use that exact PowerPoint in the classroom.
Gotcha.
And so they have all their, you know, cubes and handouts and this and that, and I'm like, this is where you should be, you're working on this, and I'm walking around helping, and then we go, okay, now you should be here. And, you know, the analysis questions, just so I can refer to them, you know, and we can have a class discussion or whatever. So, no, that was not the lesson plan. Yes, ma'am.
In my class, well, Margaret's not here, but Johnny is. I require my students, as a way for them to look at all of the details of the lesson like he's talking about, is they have to create a PowerPoint for the whole lesson. Every part of the lesson, they have to put the questions on there they're going to ask the students. They have to put the answers, because you're talking about meeting ELP standards. And they have to have the graphics, they have to have the multiple representations. And the written lesson plans are, Johnny, what, 4 or 5 pages long?
Or longer.
Yeah, or longer,
But that
for,
works.
for maybe a 45-minute lesson.
Yeah,
That reduces the
brutal.
sloppy language, you can
yeah.
have it on a PowerPoint, because you know what you're gonna say.
But we do collaborative planning. I do not let my students, I don't tell them to plan a lesson because they don't know how. So we do collaborative planning. The first thing that we have to do is to make sure we understand the content. So
Right.
whether it's a math lesson or science lesson, if I don't understand the content well, I am not going to select the proper activities. I'm not going to teach it correctly. I have to know more than I teach, because I can't undermine their future understanding of things.
I have a question. How many, do you do it in groups, pairs,
Yes,
like 4, 3, what do you? 4.
3 to 4, depending on the class size.
And then you have a rubric for that?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, that's what I was trying to find. I'm like,
Oh,
I know I have an
okay.
actual
Mhm.
rubric.
Do you have that conversed one, maybe, or like any other information? That sounds really cool.
It was super cool.
Ask
Yes.
that question
It
again, I didn't hear
is-
it.
I just wanted to know if they had the Everest thing available somewhere, cause that sounds.
That is from Boston Museum of Science.
Mhm.
And we did that with the help of Transformation 2013. Where is it? See, I don't know, I'm not gonna lie to you, I don't know where it is right now, because I don't teach sixth grade anymore.
I do.
I only taught you have it?
It's in my classroom, but yeah. Like,
Okay.
the actual book is what we got it from, and then we kind of adapt and add stuff. Since it's a STEM program, we add the social studies.
Yeah,
and
I taught
science
sixth
and
grade for
English.
1 year, I think.
What
Two?
science
2
was
years?
in-
2? Okay. So
This
we're
is-
going on our 7th.
Yeah, this is
So
from
we haven't
Everest up
done
here.
that in a long
Our
time.
PowerPoint from that just kind of showing.
Oh, look at you.
Yeah, I
This is
know.
from a long
I
time.
keep-
Oh,
I know.
he works
I
at Baskin Robbins. Oh, yeah. He's like, you were my tea. Oh my gosh, she's so tiny. Yeah, he gave me his employee discount. He was so cute. Yeah, gosh, this is a long time
What
ago.
science teak was in?
Speed. Understanding, determining the speed of transport using distance divided by time. In fact, that's what they're doing right now. So they were using, so they'd use the protractor to look at the angles, using the meter stick to measure the height, and then determining the speed based on those, distance traveled.
It's been a while.
I don't have a lesson.
When they finished it, did you guys talk about how they actually get the climbers down?
I don't remember. I don't remember a
We
lot
went to go
about
see,
it.
we went to go see Everest at the IMAX.
Cool.
That was fun. The kids like that. How did they get them down?
They get them down, but they don't put them on a zip line because they go too fast. It creates
Yeah.
reverse altitude sickness.
Mhm.
It makes it even worse. So they have to just basically
Go
just like
slower.
carry them down. and
Literally
stuff
like
that.
pack him
I was just thinking that's really cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, they
And
do.
I remember the name of the book was called Peak.
It's a crazy.
I read it with them. I mean, not like with them, but I read it at the same time that they were, because I had never, and it was such a good book. It was really good.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So it just kinda
Were they
shows the-
reading that in their ELA class?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, that was, see, the value of, well, let me back up. Divine Middle School started what they had a few years ago called Curriculum Wall, and so they met, that was back when you had enough money for the politicians to cut it. They had a team time and they had a conference time. And on the curriculum on the wall, the 4 core areas would put their scope and sequence for the year or the 6 weeks. And they would see where each of them was, and they started making those kind of connections. And that's something that you might want to think about at this point, I guess, doing it on your own. But at least you're starting now with your other partner, your math or your science partner.
What was the book?
Peak.
And that was for sixth graders.
Yes.
Now, did ELA have them read
6 years
Peak
ago.
because of your PBL or?
Because